With that, I know we have a bunch of questions. Why don't we start with the ones that folks painstakingly wrote down? Where did those go? There was one over here. Perfect. And then we'll open it up more broadly. But I want to make sure we start with the great things. You want to read them?
I'm going to read them.
All right. Make sure that I don't answer the question that I wish was asked.
That's
good.
What are going to be your priorities in Congress?
Start with the big picture. I like it. Let me say this. My priorities in Congress are very simple. Affordable and accessible health care, real immigration reform, and more jobs here in the Valley. On all three of those issues, Jeff Denham has taken a vote in the last 18 months that deeply hurts the constituents of this district. We got to make sure that everybody knows that, right? On affordable health care, right? A vote for Trump care. On comprehensive immigration reform, consistent failures in a district that is deeply dependent on immigration. And on jobs, a vote last October for a tax bill that raised taxes in so many people in districts like ours, where 60% of our residents took the property tax deduction, and yet also added $2 trillion to the debt, which we're going to pay and increase costs in Social Security and Medicare. Those are my top three priorities. That's what we got to fix.
In the simplest way, explain the difference regarding the water issue between you and Denham.
Great question. So, on water, the Central Valley would not exist without water. And if we don't have water, the Central Valley won't exist in another 100, 200 years in the future. And our interests are under threat. They're under threat because we are a region of 3 million people in a state of 35 million that gets left behind and ignored all too often. We've seen that in the Water Board's decision to cut our water allocation by 40%, which I think is outrageous. That was in the face of thousands of comments from people in this district and across the whole state, and yet they did it anyway. And that was in the face of enormous amounts of scientific research that showed the costs, the economic costs, the cost to jobs, thousands of job losses, billions of dollars of revenue lost here in the Central Valley. People will be hurt by that decision, and it was anti-scientific and outrageous. The other way that we're being hurt is with the passage of the Delta Tunnels, or the movement forward on the Delta Tunnels. That is a movement that will take water from Northern California and ship it down south. And like so many issues, Jeff Denham says one thing and did another. He said he's going to stand up for our water, and yet just a couple weeks ago, in an appropriations bill on from the Interior, he voted for a bill that would ease the passage of the Delta Tunnels. It basically makes it harder to stop those in court. He did that after taking thousands of dollars of campaign contributions from farmers and companies in Southern California that would immensely profit from that decision. I think that's wrong. That's one of the reasons that I've made a pledge to not accept a single dollar of corporate PAC donations. I want to make sure that you know, every single time I vote, you may not always agree with me, you may not always see eye to eye with me, but you will know that I am voting in what I believe is this district's best interests, in the best interests of our constituents. And that's something that I don't think Jeff Denham has done, and water is a great example of what we need. We need to do two things. We need to fight for our fair share, we need to push back against the Water Board, we need to push against the Delta Tunnels, and second, we need to mitigate the fact that we don't have all the political power on the world, and we need to make more use of the water we do have. We need to move forward on measures for water efficiency, micro-irrigation drips. We need to move forward on successful programs like groundwater that are going to ameliorate groundwater depletion, right? We see a lot of farms that are teetering and losing because of the groundwater depletion. We need to adopt new technologies like desalination that will increase the water production here in the valley. There are things we can do, but it starts with one very simple thing: having someone who will fight for us. All right?
How are you going to be different than Jeff Denham?
Other ways. I agree with Jeff Denham on a whole lot of what he says. I disagree with basically every vote that Jeff Denham has taken. Jeff Denham says one thing in this district and then does the exact opposite when he gets back to Washington, D.C. He stood in front of 1,000 of his constituents a year and a half ago, and he said he would vote no on that health care bill. He came back to this district time and time again, wrote 1 million press releases, and said he believed in immigration reform. In fact, he actually released a Spanish language TV ad on the exact, saying that he loved Dreamers the exact same day he voted for a bill that would kill a chance of the Dream Act. That happened the exact same day. And on water, he says we need more water in the valley, and yet he passed a bill, or he voted for a bill just a couple weeks ago, which would undermine access to water here in the valley. So I actually agree with a whole lot of what he says. A lot of his press releases sound real good. But he's a guy in a district that voted for Hillary Clinton, that voted for Barack Obama, with more registered Democrats than Republicans, who has voted with his party 98% of the time. This is a purple district. We all know it. We live and breathe it. The interests of this district are not clearly 100% aligned with one party or the other. That means that we have to have a representative that is going to fight for us. And what Jeff Denham has proven over the last 8 years is he's more interested in fighting for his party leadership. He's more interested in fighting for himself than in actually fighting for us. And that's what we got to change. And then we'll open it up to more.
Let's do 2 of these because you've covered a lot of this.
Yes,
I'm going to
sir.
let you see this one so you can see the name. Will you be having debates with Jeff Denham?
P.S. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I'd love to. But in fact, actually, we've invited Jeff Denham to every one of our 16 town halls across this district. I hope he shows up. He hasn't actually had an open access to the public in a year and a half, despite maybe all those hidden birthday parties that Jenny mentioned. He doesn't actually show up anywhere where we can actually take questions from his constituents. And he has not done that since he voted that way on the health care bill, which I think reveals quite a lot. I want to do as many debates as Jeff Denham wants to do. I want to do a ton of debates, as long as 2 things are clear. Number 1, it's got to be open to the public. Jeff Denham has proposed doing debates where ordinary constituents are not able to walk from the street into the room. I think that's wrong. I think a member of Congress should not be able to pick his voters, to pick the people he's talking to. He should be open to everyone. That's not what Jeff Denham's done. And second, he only wants to do it in places that have basically already endorsed his campaign. So he's picked spots like the Farm Bureau over in Stockton, which is not even in the district, that's already endorsed his campaign. I think that's wrong. I think we should be doing them in places like the McHenry Event Center, places like the Assyrian American Civic Center, where we did a town hall earlier this afternoon. Places like the Gallo Center for the Arts, where we can host a lot of folks. That's what I want to do. The one event he has agreed to is an editorial board interview with the Modesto Bee, which is great. I'll be there too. Unfortunately, he did it on the condition that nobody actually show up and there's no audience. So it'll be live cast. I encourage you all to watch it and to see how he answers any questions that he has not answered over the last 18 months. But at the end of the day, you can be somebody that disagrees with me on every single issue. I think you still want 2 things. You want somebody who will show up, and you want somebody who will tell you the truth. Those aren't issue aligned. Those are making sure that you are responsive, that the representative in this district actually listens to the people. And I would argue that on both of those counts, Jeff Denham has failed us. He has not shown up for a long time, 18 months. And when he has, he's told us he's going to do one thing and he's done the opposite. And we can do better.
Comment on gun violence and climate change.
Gun violence and climate change. All right. 2-part. Okay, so let's take gun violence first. We have a lot of challenges. I think we all saw what happened in Florida, what happened in Las Vegas, and we're horrified. I certainly was. And I think waking up every morning and not knowing the next headline for the next mass atrocity is heartbreaking. And Sandy talked about this, and I hear about this from many of our student interns every single day, even here in the Valley, who are afraid to go to school. because they know of the horrors that might ensue. They've seen it on the news. We've all have. We're lucky we live in a state that actually has pretty good protections against gun violence. California enacted them 25 years ago, and they've cut gun deaths down by 60%. You can't buy an AR-15 in California like the one that was used in Florida. You have to have a 10-day waiting period, which is really important, especially for the epidemic of gun suicides, which are tens of thousands of people that die every year from that. And third, we have universal background checks. Here in California, those proposals have worked, but they don't exist around the rest of the country. And that's what we need to fix. I think we should take all the California laws that have been successful, keep them where they are, and make sure that's the law of the land across the rest of the country. You should not be able to buy a weapon of war and take it into a school, as an example. But in Las Vegas, Nevada, right next door, you can. And that's what we got to fix. Oh, and then climate change. Yes. Sorry, I forgot it was a two-parter. We are living with the results of climate change, right? We went through a 7-year drought here in the valley, followed by a year of flooding. We saw it. We lived it. We are also living with the effects of pollution. And a lot of that pollution isn't coming from the US. It's coming from coal factories in China that pollute. That smog and pollution comes all across the Pacific, and it settles in the first valley it finds, which happens to be us. It's one of the reasons we have the highest rates of childhood asthma in the country. I had childhood asthma as a kid. I know so many others do. That is a real problem here. Those are tied together. We can fix them. But we need to make sure that we're part of international agreements that are going to be doing something about it. Maybe, for instance, the Paris Climate Accord. That's it. And when Trump pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accord, I think we're losing a huge chance. And the areas of our country that are going to feel the most pain, it's not just the coastal areas, it's the areas that depend on the land, like us. What do you think is the most threatening thing to our water security, not in the next 10, 15 years, but long term? It's the effects of climate change, right? If we want the Central Valley to thrive 100, 200 years in the future, we need to make sure that we're mitigating the effects that we see happening here in the Valley every single day. We can do that if we're actually part of the international agreements that are already trying to do a good thing. We see China already making leaps in this, and maybe potentially leapfrogging us in some of their clean energy and solar panel developments. We need to catch up. We can't catch up if we have an administration where the EPA is a total joke. And we have administrators who are more interested in redecorating their office than actually regulating the environment. We will be able to fix that if we have checks and balances back in our Congress, which is sorely lacking today. I'll repeat them. All right, let's see what I can do. All right, who wants to start up? Yes, sir. I saw you first.
Well, first I'd like to commend you for not taking PAC contributions. And A, do you think that is enough for candidates to refuse such corporate PAC contributions? And if not, for the help of our country, and if not, what do you think else needs to be done for the system to work properly?
I don't think it. So the question is, I refuse to take corporate PAC money. Is that enough? That's a voluntary move on my part. Is it enough if we were to make that the law of the land? No, it's not enough. We have more problems. Money in politics is awful. I hate it, and I think it degrades our electoral system. It also degrades the legitimacy of our political process. And even further, it degrades the outcomes. We had a corporate tax bill that passed with majority Republican support in Congress that the vast majority of this country didn't want to become law. The vast majority of people thought that was terrible. Not just in the blue areas like ours, which we're going to face rising tax burdens because of that, but across the country. And yet it passed. And it passed because of folks like Jeff Denham, where 70% of the dollars he takes come from corporate PACs and special interests. What I think needs to happen is two things. First, we got to repeal Citizens United. This is a Supreme Court decision that essentially counted corporations as people and allowed unfettered access of folks like the Koch brothers, who are going to spend $400 million just in the 2018 midterms. Two brothers, $400 million. That's a lot of money. You can buy you a lot of tacos. Right. It was dollar taco day, sorry. And that's a problem, and we've got to repeal it. The only way it's going to happen now with a Supreme Court decision is if we actually do a constitutional amendment. We can't do that with the Congress we have today, which means we have to win some elections. And second, we've got to go much further than that. I believe in public financing of our political system. I think that's what our founding fathers, they certainly did not anticipate the system that we have today, where Jeff Denham and the Republican Party will spend millions and millions of dollars against me over the next 11 weeks. You'll see it on TV, you'll see it in your mailbox, you'll see it everywhere. You'll largely see it not about the issues, you'll see it about pretty much anything else, because they know if this is a debate about the issues, they'll lose. But that's what they're going to try to do. And I know it's going to happen. What I can do is make sure that I set a record that I believe is the way that people should be running for office. I've been thrilled that we've gotten 79,000 people that have contributed to our campaign, an average of $25, $30, which is amazing. So aside from that, we can put in real progress if we're able. Unfortunately, on campaign finance in particular, we've got to win more elections than the ones we're going to win in 2018. We've got to go a lot farther, but I think you will see more and more candidates taking principled stands like mine, and I hope that will lead to some electoral consequences for people who don't.
I'd like to follow through on your response to not wanting to appear before the Modesto Bees editorial board with Denham. Don't you think that that would be a great opportunity for you to show the general public your differences?
I do, and I accepted it.
I know you want to open it up to the public, that the public would, be able to be present. But something like that could be streamed, and...
I accepted it. I accepted their invitation.
Oh, you accepted it?
I did.
Sorry, I've been gone for 5 days.
No, I accepted it a couple weeks ago. Yeah, the same day it was announced. I'm all on board. I think we should do it.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Good question and good clarifying. Yes, ma'am.
I love everything you have to say and what you stand for, because it is how we believe, and we have been heartsick since 2016.
Great question.
Everything.
Starting out fantastic. Jeff Denham does not belong where he is. He does not have the ethics or the morals. But I have given all of that, and that I will vote for you. I'll tell you that right now. However, there is one concern I have had that weighs very deeply on me, and that has to do with your voting record. And that since I was able to vote at 18, the last 50 years, I was able to live through my age. Other than one time when I forgot and I was so angry with myself, I voted because I don't understand how someone can represent us if you've never even represented yourself by voting. And I would like you to explain that to me because it really bothers me. Great question. Yeah, let me repeat it. And some of that, I have voted. I voted many times, but I have not voted 100% of the time. I've been inconsistent, and that was wrong. I was complacent. I've always believed in solving the problems that I am still trying to solve today. But I thought the way to do that was maybe not through politics. I thought it was through business. I thought it could have been through teaching. I've always been deeply disappointed by the inequities in the Central Valley. but it wasn't clear to me that politics was the bottom. And I was wrong. The reality is that my vote did count, right? And by the way, a lot of folks were in my vote. College kids in this district, 14% turnout in 2016. That's abysmal. And why is that happening? It's happening because politicians are not engaging and not asking for the vote. And second, because folks like me didn't think their vote mattered. That's wrong. What changed that view was November 2016. When I saw so starkly, you better believe I voted in that election, and did more. I did what I could to volunteer, but it wasn't enough. I was one drop in a much larger pond. But I saw, flash before my very eyes, that on the issues that I cared about most, on healthcare and immigration and everything we're talking about, the real reason that more progress was not happening was because folks like me, all across this district, were not voting. We're voting for the right people to put in place policies that would solve the problems of this district. That complacency was wrong, and I regret it. And what I'm trying to do now is go from the sidelines into the arena. Because the reality is we need to have a political leadership that is going to fight for us. And by the way, I think that is a very common story in this district. And that's one of the things that I think is really exciting. Those 3,000 volunteers that are working on our campaign or signed up to volunteer and knock on doors, 95% of them have never worked on a campaign before. That is thrilling. The silver lining of this entire era is that folks like me are coming out off the sidelines into the arena saying we need to make our voice heard because the results of the election that we saw happening there do not share the values that we want in our country. And the only way that that's going to change is by changing things at the ballot box. And that's what I'm committed to. Yeah, that's a good question. We're out here trying to do everything we possibly can. The water issue is not just one that's happening in Sacramento, it's happening in DC. I think it's deeply hypocritical for a politician like Jeff Bennett to stand in front of a crowd and talk about the importance of Central Valley water weeks after he voted for a bill to make it easier to ship that water to the south. That's wrong, right? The idea that you can have somebody that do that, to have that hypocrisy exposed, I think is outrageous. We need more water here in the Central Valley. I have deeply opposed the Water Board's decision. I've written an op-ed in the Modesto Bee. Some of you might have seen it, talking about this. Gotten plenty of emails from environmentalists that are not that happy with it. But at the end of the day, we need an advocate for Central Valley interests. We need to make sure that we have somebody who's going to fight for us on the issues that matter most. And water is the biggest issue, right? We are a region, again, of 3 million people in a state of 35 million that get placed second federal. Showing up at a rally when you voted the opposite way a couple weeks before, or for the opposite effect, isn't right. And that's why we got to make sure voters actually know about that.
Yeah, but you weren't there.
I was not there.
We asked why you weren't there, not Jeff Bennett.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not here because I got to make sure we got to do all these events. I'm focused on the needs of the district. And the needs of the district, I think, are not necessarily met by standing in front of a podium in front of folks and talking about what we want to have happen on water when you're voting the opposite way in DC. Yeah, that's a good point. Act on it instead of speak about it. I think that's right. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thanks. Thank you for everything you're saying. I have a big concern, and I'm sure a lot of people in the community have noticed this in their neighborhoods as well, and that's been the huge increase in homelessness in Modesto. And I know I've tried individually helping people and talking to them. I know a lot of these folks are vets, and I don't feel like there should be a single homeless veteran in the United States. And what I would like to know is what we as
great question. And to repeat it to folks who didn't hear it, what are we going to do about the homeless problem here in our district? We have 4,000 homeless folks, and that number, as I think we all see, has increased dramatically over the last several years. We do two things. We can make sure we have the housing resources, and we can make sure we have the mental health services to address the root causes of a lot of these issues. Right now in DC, we see the opposite happen. We see our federal housing department led by Ben Carson, whose only qualification is that he once lived in a house. That's not good enough. And you see what's happened is because of that is more a signal of what this administration thinks about housing than it is anything else. And what we've seen is a dramatic cutting in resources for affordable housing, incentives to build affordable housing in areas where they're really needed, like this district where housing costs are going up. And in fact, they actually have had proposals to kill the department entirely and to eliminate federal assistance for affordable housing. Affordable housing is a pretty simple issue. The answer to a need for more affordable housing is more affordable housing. We don't get that with the system we have today. But our homeless problem will not just be solved just by building more houses. We've got to go further. I want to make sure that we're treating an issue that should be a social worker issue with a social worker's touch, and not a police officer's touch. I think a lot of times we criminalize behavior and don't get to the root cause of it. There are programs across America that have had a lot of success in addressing homelessness. And so one of those programs, cities like Salt Lake City that have done a really good job, have sent out social workers with police when they respond to homeless calls. And so instead of just locking somebody up and putting them in jail overnight, you're actually trying to make sure that they get the health care services, the mental health services, the preventative health care services to address the core reason why they're out on the streets in the first place. We need to be scaling that program up and programs like it, so it's not just in one small city, but across the rest of the country. And we have the resources to do that. And this goes back to what I believe is the fundamental role of Congress and the federal government in general, which is we should be looking for success stories across America, programs that work. And we should be looking to expand those programs and taking whatever those green sprouts are, wherever we have the potential to expand it, and we should say those are the success stories, this is what we should be doubling down on. And homeless services is a real great example of where we know what works, and yet we're not expanding it at the pace we should be. And we're seeing the results right here. All right, one or two more. All right, one more. You can seem very definitive. Yes, sir.
Yeah, given the fact that both Modesto and Turlock are college towns, I am sad and worried as I look around the room that there aren't enough young people. What are you doing to reach out to young people?
Yeah, I see a couple. But no, you're right. And just to be clear, 16 town halls. We're doing town halls at Stan State. I believe we're doing them at MJC as well. But you're right. A lot of this district is young folks. I mean, MJC has tens of thousands of students, at least people taking at least one class. Stan State, where my brother goes, is big. We have got to engage in folks, and this goes to the question I talked about earlier, and give them a reason to vote. College kids in our district have a little bit of a different set of issues than other folks. Most college kids have jobs in the Central Valley, right? I mean, I saw this at MJC. Every single kid in my class had at least one job. Some of them had two. And there's so much commuters. There's a lot of folks that commute long distances, especially college kids in this district. That means that the work of political engagement and actually talking to those people, it makes it a little bit tougher than a college campus where most folks don't have jobs, where everybody lives on campus. It's a little bit of a different problem, but it's solved the same way. We need to make sure that we're reaching out to everybody. And I'm thrilled we've already seen some progress, right? So the Stan State Democratic Club had a handful of members a year or two ago. Now they have hundreds of folks that are engaged that have come up. That's a really exciting thing. And I think that's happened for two reasons. One is the issues on this election are deeply impactful for young people. If you are one of my brother's classmates and you want a job, you are pretty upset by what you're seeing happening in Washington, D.C. If you have somebody that you love that has a pre-existing condition, you're pretty furious. If you have somebody that you love that's an immigrant, or a dreamer, right? I mean, there are 10,000 plus dreamers in this district. A lot of those, given their age demographic, are college kids or friends of college kids. That is an area where folks have more reason to vote than they ever have before. And then the second reason I think we're seeing some of the progress at Stan State and other places is quite simply showing up. That is the core essence of politics. I've been talking to Stan State for, probably been there a dozen times over the past 18 months. I've spent a lot of time at MJC. It goes back to what I believe is the core essence of what a political figure should do, which is going out and talking to everybody, and second, making sure you give people a reason to vote. So that's my promise for you. We don't know, but I'll leave you with one really good sound. We're not able to segment this out into youth folks at all, but overall, in the primary election that we had 2 months ago, we had more Democrats who voted in that primary election than the 2016 presidential primary, right? That's really exciting news. You rarely see that in politics. You rarely see a midterm with an uptick in turnout, and it only happened on the Democratic side. It didn't happen on the Republican side. And the reason for that is because people believe that these issues are really fundamental. And that's what we got to make sure. This goes back, I guess I'll close by saying these two things, because I know we have a time limit. It goes back to my central thesis in this district, which is on all the issues, healthcare, universal healthcare, immigration reform, more jobs in the Valley. I think most folks want those priorities, and they're frustrated by Jeff Denham's record. The challenge is most of them don't even know what Jeff Denham has actually voted. Maybe they know what he said, maybe they don't know anything. We got to get that fact to them. And that is where I could use all of your help. Always expect a request at the end of any political event. And here's what I would say. If any of you, I know some folks like Sam are really on the fence and still making up their mind for who they want to support. But if you've liked what you've heard tonight, if you're interested in getting involved in our campaign, I need your help. I cannot talk to 700,000 people across this district all by myself. I'm going to try, I'm going to do my best, but I need your help. I need your help to get the word out, to make phone calls, to knock on doors, to make sure that every single voter knows the record. If you're interested in that, come talk to me, talk to one of our amazing staffers all across the room. Go to harderforcongress.com, as in working harder, easy to remember, and sign up to volunteer. We are doing door knocking, phone banking, text messaging every single day, and we're doing it with the help of a lot of folks just like you. And that's the way we're going to win. We're going to win by individual one-on-one connections. And to do that, we're going to need your help. So if you're interested, please let me know. And thank you guys so much for being here tonight.